Hello everyone, today I'm going to fix a certain video from WATCHMOJO that me and my family watched a few days ago, which in my opinion was not good. I mean, that list was probably the worst, but here is the list, so yeah. So you can go and watch it, but now I'm going to make my own ranking and I hope you guys enjoy. Bye! Known for his massive voice and bigger-than-life stage presence, Bono turned rock into a global message. He was part of his own solo act. He was the Doors' wild poet, unpredictable, and the definition of 60s rebellion for the music. With raw power and attitude, Daltrey gave The Who their unstoppable force. Charisma and moves that changed what a frontman could be, making a huge impact on music and his band of the Rolling Stones. A voice that carried pain and power, speaking straight to a generation from the 90s to the 2000s in the band of Linkin Park. One of the greatest vocal ranges in rock for his era of the 2000s and the 90s in rock, blending soul with pure intensity. Brutal and emotional, Corey proved heavy metal can still be deeply human after leaving the style from the 1980s heavy metal, entering a new time with a different style. Theatrical, emotional, and unapologetic, he made emo legendary, using his emotions from the 9/11 attack back in 2001, forming My Chemical Romance. Steven Tyler was screaming high notes, having wild fashion, and a classic rock excess with his band of Aerosmith. What would be Dream On without him? David Grohl was pure energy and passion, a frontman who just loves rock. He made his own band, the Foo Fighters, after leaving Nirvana and being the drummer. Intelligent and unforgettable, art rock at its finest, making the Talking Heads one of the biggest bands of their time with their new famous song, thanks to Stranger Things, Psycho Killer. A deep, soulful voice that gave grunge its conscience, making it one of the most recognizable voices of the 90s with the music of grunge in the band of Pearl Jam. Raw, honest, and an accidental icon of a movement for grunge music. He is an icon for the grunge rock, being the frontman of the band of Nirvana. Precision, power, and the backbone of modern metal in the band of Metallica. He was the voice and the frontman for popular songs such as Master of the Puppets, Enter Sandman, and many others. Dangerous vocals and unpredictable energy that made every show explosive, being part of his bands of Guns N' Roses, with one of the most famous guitarists, Slash. He is probably one of the most recognizable, being part of Guns N' Roses, so yeah, famous frontman. Punk with a purpose, turning rebellion into meaning. He was one of the most iconic frontmen of the late 70s, being part of his band, The Clash, also known for making the famous and infamous song, Should I Stay or Should I Go Now, that is featured in the Netflix TV show, Stranger Things, and is, like I said, one of the most recognizable frontmen of the late 70s. Effortless melodies and timeless songwriting magic, done with his band of the Beatles. So many artists and other bands have taken so much inspiration from the iconic band, with so many songs as Hey Jude, Eleanor Rigby, I Wanna Hold Your Hand, and so many others, being basically the backbone for so many bands, genres, everything to come down the line, starting from the 60s. Arena-sized anthems like I Was Made for Loving You and Non-Stop Showmanship. He was part of the iconic band of the 1980s Kiss, where honestly all of them are frontmen, but the most iconic and their leader was obviously Starchild, also known as Stan Pauli, who is the creator of so many iconic Kiss songs. Big hair, flashy styles, big horses, pure 80s rock power, being part of the band Def Leppard, being the iconic frontman for the band, and being the singer for iconic songs of the band like Pour Some Sugar on Me and Hysteria. Screams that helped define heavy metal, being part of the band Deep Purple. They have so many iconic songs and albums. One of my favorite songs from the band is Child in Time, the 1992 remastered, being the iconic frontman for one of heavy metal's most iconic bands of the late 70s to the early 80s. Anthems built for stadiums and open highways, being part of the self-titled band Bon Jovi. They made so many iconic songs such as Bad Medicine, You Give Love a Bad Name, and the most iconic, Living on a Prayer, being one of the most iconic frontmen of the entire decade of the 1980s. A born entertainer, loud, wild, and fearless, being part of the band Van Halen with the iconic guitarist Eddie Van Halen, who are another one of the most iconic frontmen of the entire decade of the 1980s, making songs as Jump, which he brings life to every show from the 1980s. Basically a chameleon who turned music into art with so many iconic songs and albums, such as Let's Dance or Moon Age Daydream, and also being a recognizable character in the movie of Labyrinth, also doing a tiny bit of acting. Raw attitude and rock and roll soul. What would be Highway to Hell without his iconic voice? He was the most important frontman of 1980s rock with their most iconic song of Back in Black from the band of AC/DC. That album is from 1980 and they're probably one of the most iconic bands. One of the smoothest and most emotional voices ever being part of the iconic band Journey, which he eventually left unfortunately. Making iconic songs such as Don't Stop Believing and many others. I honestly can't think of others, but he has such an incredible voice that is so recognizable and iconic and very special to the era of the 1980s. Operatic power and commanding stage presence. One of my favorite singers from the band of Iron Maiden, who was introduced in the 1982 album The Number of the Beast, being one of my favorite artists and being one of the most iconic voices for heavy metal back in the early 1980s. Metal's highest praise, pushing vocals to the extreme, being part of the band Judas Priest, as was considered as the gods of heavy metal, which, with his iconic voice and incredible singing range, being the definition of heavy metal. Fantasy, power, and one of the greatest voices in metal, being one of the most iconic singers, being in multiple bands, but having a solo work represented with Dio, Holy Diver, his 1983 album, giving that eerie feel that was the iconic voice for the early 1980s. Bluesy wails and mythical rock energy. What would this list be without the iconic singer for the band of Led Zeppelin? One of the most iconic bands from the 70s to the 80s, being one of the most recognized with the iconic song of Immigrants. What would it be without him? The Prince of Darkness, Chaos, Charisma, and Legacy, Ozzy Osbourne, being part of the band of Black Sabbath from the 70s all the way to the 80s, where he started his solo act with the release of his album Blizzard of Oz with Randy Rhoads, an iconic legend and one of the pioneers to heavy metal. I speak for all of us when I know that you all guessed that it was going to be Freddie Mercury as number one, the ultimate frontman, voice presence, and pure immortality. He has left a mark in music history from generations, all the way from the 70s up to his death back in 1991, and one of the most iconic in his band of Queen. We have the full list. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful day, like and subscribe. Bye!